Greek myths back in the day served to explain wild stories people couldn't quite comprehend, and to highlight the importance of certain events and legendary figures. But because of that, this also means that they themselves became quite fantastical in terms of their reasoning and their makeup, also reflecting some ideals and morals that, well, they don't quite speak to the modern world in the same way. Welcome back, my fellow bees, it's me, Amanda, and these are the top 10 unusual Greek mythology stories that will leave you confused. What is your favorite myth? Let me know in the comments. I love talking myths. Number 10. Icarus. We all probably know of Icarus and the phrase taken to sum up his story: don't fly too close to the sun. What happened to Icarus? Well, he was made wings by his father, but they were made out of wax, which oddly enough is a strange material to use in building wings, really. His father, though, was Daedalus, who made the famed maze that the Minotaur of Crete resided in, and was known to be a great inventor and engineer. Yet, for some reason, he chose wax as his material for wings, so kinda contradicts him being a great inventor, I think, but okay. Maybe he was just trying to prove how skilled he was. He was like, look at this, I can make wings out of any material, whatever I got, feathers, wax, whatever. Daedalus was actually being kept in Crete as a prisoner, which is why he made the wings for his son to basically escape captivity. Daedalus warns his son Icarus to not fly too close to the sun, because clearly these wings will melt since, you know, they are made out of wax. And what does Icarus do? He takes the wings, he puts them on, bids farewell to his father saying, don't worry, I got this, and he immediately flies too close to the sun. The wings melt, he falls, he dies. I mean, what even is this story? The real moral should be don't make wings out of wax. It's not a good building material for wings. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Bumblebee, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Number 9. Mom, where do human souls come from? Well, in the modern age, this question has evolved. You've likely heard it before. Where do babies come from? Back in ancient Greek times, people instead wanted an answer to this far more philosophical version of said question: where do human souls come from? The answer? Also storks, maybe? It was believed that human souls traveled down to earth as birds, storks included, I imagine. Number 8. Leda and the Swan. Another mess that in retrospect is pretty terrible but is also quite ridiculous is the myth of Leda and the Swan. This is a story about Zeus having an affair and cheating on his wife Hera, because that's just how he always be doing in myths. Zeus thought Leda was very beautiful and he basically wanted to sleep with her. Zeus wonders to himself, what would be the best form to take to seduce Leda? A handsome man? Make myself look like her own husband? Nah, I know, I'll turn myself into a swan. And indeed, he somehow seduces her as a swan. Now, there are versions of this story where Zeus does not even actually seduce Leda, instead forcing himself upon her, but I prefer the version of the story where Zeus just seduced her as a swan, because I mean, what does that even look like? That's so ridiculous. Did he go out? Did he like wear a little swan bow tie? Did he go out as a swan and like get a nice bottle of wine and say sweet things to her? And then she was just like, yeah, I'm down with this. This is one charming swan. So Zeus and Leda end up sleeping together and she bore him 2 children, one of which ended up being Helen of Troy. However, I just love the idea that Leda maybe actually did fall in love with the swan without even ever maybe knowing that it was actually Zeus. I think that would be crazy. She also has like 2 sets of twins, I think at once, that are 2 of them are her husbands and 2 of them are the swans, because she slept with both of them the same day, and I'm just like, that doesn't even make sense. That's not how babies work, but I guess if it's a god, maybe it works differently. Number 7. The White Crow. Were crows always black feathered? According to ancient Greek myth, no, they were not. Initially, they were apparently white, which I don't know if that's actually true in science, but in mythology, that's what we're going with. The crow or raven was associated with Apollo initially, and he had his own symbolic bird spy on his lover Coronis. When the bird returned and told Apollo that Coronis was actually being unfaithful to the god, in an anger, he charred the feathers of his bird, turning the famed white feather crow into the black feathered version we have today. That's not really how charring works for feathers though. Pretty sure that bird should be featherless or deceased. Number 6. The origin of the Minotaur. This is another tragic story, but at the same time it's also pretty weird, especially by modern day standards. Poseidon gifted to Minos, the king of Crete, a bull which was to be sacrificed, a beautiful snow white bull. However, Minos thought to himself, wow, that is a beautiful bull. I know I'm supposed to sacrifice to the gods, I know the gods are the whole reason that I have this like beautiful kingdom on Crete and that I should pay tribute to them, and that to mess with them based on other myths that I've heard is most definitely not a good idea. However, I'm just gonna keep this bull and not sacrifice it because YOLO! So what happened to Minos? Well, oddly, even though this was ultimately his call in the myth, nothing happens to him. He was fine. But his wife, however, ends up being punished as a result, which I guess could be seen as a punishment to Minos since she is, after all, you know, his wife. But still, I don't think she deserved any of what comes her way based on what I've heard of her. Pasiphae, Minos' wife, ends up being cursed to fall in love with the bull. So now Minos is saying, wow, this is a really beautiful bull, isn't it? Isn't it, my wife? And Pasiphae is thinking, oh yeah, I mean, wait a minute. Oh yeah, this is a really beautiful bull. Kinda sexy too. And she falls in love with the bull. Together they have a child, and that child ends up being the Minotaur of Crete, who they keep in their labyrinth, which was constructed for them by Daedalus, an amazing engineer and inventor. Which also was pretty terrible because you know this Minotaur didn't really do anything to deserve this punishment either, as far as I know. Other than being born, I guess? He is described as being a monster in mythology, but really he was just the offspring in this story of Pasiphae and her bull Boo. So he shouldn't inherently be evil or anything. I just imagine the poor Minotaur in the maze just being bored as heck and thinking, what did I do to deserve this? Pretty terrible really, and also poor Pasiphae. I wonder if she ever dreamt of having a life with the bull and their like little Minotaur child, because honestly Minos really sounds like he sucks most of the time in myth. Number 5. Io and the Gnat. Io was another woman Zeus wanted to be with, but she was much more wary of him. She had heard the stories and she wasn't planning on falling for the swan trick or any of Zeus's tricks for that matter. Zeus tried many different forms to get with Io, even apparently transforming himself into a mist at one point. However, despite never being with Zeus, Io gets punished anyways. Her father throws her out, and Hera becomes jealous of Io and the attention she is attracting from Zeus, even though it is actually unwanted attention. She turns Io into a cow, condemning her to walk the earth forever plagued by a giant gnat which nips at her rump. I guess the moral of the story is whether you get with Zeus or not, if he has his eye on you, you're basically just in trouble. There's no way out of it. Number 4. The arrival of Odysseus. What if instead of calling people, we just looked at the birds to figure out when our friends would be arriving to join us on a night out? That was a method used back in the day according to myths, at least by oracles, people that could actually read bird patterns. For the arrival of Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey, the movement of the birds across the sky was used to actually predict his arrival. Apparently an eagle flies 3 times overhead and then 3 times to the right, and that translates to Odysseus is arriving. Thanks, birds. Number 3. The ship to Crete. This is probably one of my favorite myths to recount from all of Greek mythology. It is the story of Theseus and a ship that he sailed on in order to rescue the people that were to be sacrificed from his home, Athens. So Theseus finds out that his dad is Aegeus, the king of Athens. However, there is also at this time an understanding between Crete and Athens where Athens is basically made to deliver 14 of their best to sacrifice to Crete's Minotaur. Theseus, however, has a plan, and he decides he is actually going to find a way to save all of the tributes and then return them home, including himself because he's also being sent as one. And his dad, who he just reconnected with, basically says, well, it's gonna be really hard for me to see you go, especially if you don't make it back. I'm just gonna trust that you can save our people, but I need you to promise me that upon your return, you change the sail to let me know that you actually survived. So when I look out at the horizon, I'm not worrying the whole time that the ship on its way back doesn't have you on it or any of these awesome people. Theseus goes and actually succeeds in his mission. He gets some help from Ariadne, the daughter of Minos, who is enchanted by Theseus, and basically decides to help him by giving him a ball of, in some versions of the story, magical thread, which he can then use to retrace his steps after defeating the Minotaur to get back out of the maze. In the rush of his escape, however, it makes Theseus forget his promise to his dad, and he forgets to change the sail in his haste. So Aegeus looks for the ship and sees it returning, but the sail is the same one that he sent them out with. It has the exact same color and everything. It has not been changed to signify Theseus' victory. Heartbroken, he flings himself off of a cliff and into what we now refer to as the Aegean Sea. Although this is tragic, the weird good news for Theseus when he returns is that while he has lost his father, which is really sad, this actually now makes him king, so he becomes King Theseus. Number 2. Cassandra, Bird Whisperer. Divining people's arrival times by watching birds fly is one thing. Understanding their own speech is on a whole other level though. That is what famous oracle Cassandra claimed she could do. How did she learn how to speak to birds? Apparently a snake once licked her ear, and that is how. Number 1. Perithius loves Persephone. This is one of the weirdest Greek myths that I remember from my time in high school in Ancient Civilizations class, which honestly happened to be one of my favorite classes ever in high school. This is the story of what happened to the best friend of Theseus. Everyone always talks about Theseus, the champion, the hero, the king, and all of his stories. But did you know that his BFF actually has a pretty cool story all his own? Or rather, not all his own, because he does ask for Theseus' help and for Theseus to join him on his adventure, but I digress. The story is Perithius' pursuit of Persephone. So Perithius gets it in his head that he should be with Persephone. Perithius goes so far as to claim that he can tell that Persephone wants to be with him too. So he tells Theseus one night at a bar, guess what, Persephone, she wants to be with me, man, and I need your help to get down to the underworld to save her from Hades. Theseus at first, he doesn't believe Perithius. Wants to be with you? Why? Why? What makes you so special? I mean, she's with freaking Hades, man, that would be crazy. But Perithius insists, trust me, she does. I'm alive and Hades is all about death and the afterlife. Ugh, that's what I have over him. Trust me, Persephone is over the whole underworld scene. Eventually, Perithius does convince Theseus to join him in his adventure, promising it as a final triumph for his BFF King Theseus, who is getting on in his years at this point. So the two of them end up going down to the underworld. They sneak in through the back door, but just as they think they're safe, they've made it. Who should they run into but Hades himself? And while they begin to panic, Hades actually surprises them, and he says, hey, oh, you guys are here for Persephone, I imagine. Of course, of course. Look, I know all about it, and in fact, Perithius, I ship you both too. I'm totally cool with this. Just come with me, step into my office, we'll file all the paperwork to have Persephone transferred back over to the world of the living permanently, and you can be on your way. Here, have a seat. Theseus and Perithius are stunned, and they do take a seat. Hades begins to laugh though. When Perithius asks what's so funny, he answers, you fools are, of course. That bench is impossibly sticky. Once anyone sits on it, they will never ever be able to get up again. So now you're both stuck to that office bench for eternity in this underworld. So GG, nice try. Oh, and it's also super uncomfortable, so like have a good life. Hades leaves them there, and for years they were indeed stuck on that bench with little imps apparently like nipping at their feet. Theseus does eventually get free though, being rescued by his cousin Hercules later on, but not Perithius, as far as I know. He just stays there forever. It's probably still there today. That's about it. I'll see you in the future.